On a quiet night in 1938, in a village where silence blanketed every home, a man stood alone in the attic of a secluded house. That night, with everything meticulously prepared, his resolve had become unbreakable. The time had come, and there was no turning back. He slipped out of the room, gripping the axe tightly in his hands, as he crept toward the bedroom where his grandmother slept. He aimed for a swift, fatal strike, but her neck resisted, clinging stubbornly to life. By the time her head finally tumbled to the floor, blood had pooled around him, thick and dark in the faint light. He then reached for the modified shotgun he had carefully crafted. For him, the horror he had just unleashed was only the beginning, the opening act of a far bloodier revenge still to come. Mutsuo Toi was born on March 5, 1917, in Kamo Village, Okayama Prefecture, into a wealthy farming family that owned extensive fields, rice paddies, and forests. However, tragedy struck when Mutsuo was just 1 or 2 years old. His grandfather and both of his parents died from tuberculosis, a highly feared and contagious disease at the time. This left Mutsuo in the care of his grandmother, who took on the role of his guardian, but the family's hardships were far from over. Households burdened by multiple cases of tuberculosis face social discrimination, often branded as rugai suji. In an attempt to escape this stigma, Mutsuo's grandmother made the decision to move the family, including Mutsuo and his older sister, to a new location. When Mutsuo turned 5, they resettled in the village where his grandmother had been born. The family sold off assets, including forests, and combined the proceeds with income from farming to maintain a relatively comfortable lifestyle. Mutsuo thrived academically in higher elementary school, serving as class leader from the 3rd grade until graduation. Known for his diligence and honesty, he earned the admiration of his teachers, who encouraged him to continue his education at a middle school rather than settle for a life as a farmer. However, with no middle school in the village, Mutsuo's grandmother tearfully begged him not to leave home. Moved by her pleas, he made the difficult decision to abandon his plans for further education. After graduation, just as Mutsuo was ready to fully commit himself to farming, tragedy struck once more. He contracted tuberculosis. Although his symptoms were mild and he gradually recovered, doctors prohibited him from returning to the physically demanding life of farming. As his health improved, he enrolled in a vocational school, aspiring to become a teacher. However, his extended absence from formal studies had taken a toll, and the once prodigious student found his academic performance slipping. In 1934, Mutsuo's older sister, Minako, whom he was very close to, got married and moved to a neighboring village, leaving him and their grandmother alone. It was around this time that Mutsuo's odd behavior started to surface. While he withdrew into isolation at home, leaving all responsibilities to his aging grandmother, his attention began to fixate on his growing sexual desires. At night, he would sneak out, spying on homes or visiting women, becoming increasingly obsessed with yobai, a local village custom where men would secretly visit women's homes at night for sexual encounters. Mutsuo became deeply engrossed in this practice, and over time, it is said that he formed relationships with several women through these nocturnal visits. Among the women Mutsuo was rumored to be involved with was Tomi, a married woman known for her promiscuity and love of gossip. Unaware of her reputation, Mutsuo confided in her, revealing that he had been ostracized from his home village due to his tuberculosis. Predictably, Tomi spread the story far and wide, and soon after, she began to openly reject Mutsuo. In a small village, such rumors traveled fast, and Mutsuo quickly found himself further isolated, shunned by the entire community. In 1937, Mutsuo faced a crushing setback when he failed the military conscription examination due to his history of tuberculosis, during a time when serving in the war was considered a mark of honor for men. This rejection was a crushing and unbearable humiliation for him. Adding to his despair, Yuriko, the woman Mutsuo had especially cared for in the village, began to distance herself from him. Desperate to win her back, he tried relentlessly to get her attention, but his growing desperation only drove her further away. In the end, she married someone from a neighboring town, leaving Mutsuo heartbroken. This loss, piled on top of his earlier failures, may have been the final blow that left him feeling irreparably broken and defeated. That same year, Mutsuo secured a loan from the bank, using his land as collateral to obtain a hunting license and buy a shotgun. In 1938, he exchanged the shotgun for something more powerful, a 12-gauge 5-shot Browning hunting rifle, specifically designed for hunting large game. After acquiring the rifle, Mutsuo became intensely focused on honing his shooting skills, spending long hours in the mountains practicing each day. By night, he would wander the village with the gun in hand, spreading fear and unease among the villagers. On May 18, 1938, Yuriko returned to the village from the neighboring town to attend her brother's wedding. Upon hearing of her return, Mutsuo set his plan into motion. He climbed a utility pole and severed the power lines, plunging the entire village into darkness. At the time, power outages were common in the village, so the sudden blackout caused little alarm and raised no suspicion among the villagers. At around 1:40 a.m. on May 21st, Mutsuo stood ready, dressed in a student uniform, military gaiters, and tabi boots. A headband was tied tightly around his forehead, with small flashlights attached on either side. At his waist, he carried a Japanese sword and 2 daggers, while in his hands, he gripped the modified 9-shot Auto 5 shotgun. After brutally killing his grandmother, Mutsuo broke into a neighboring house. Inside lived Katsuyuki, a childhood friend whose absence was a stark reminder of Mutsuo's own failures. Katsuyuki had joined the Yokosuka Naval Corps, embodying the achievements and ambitions that Mutsuo had always yearned for but could never grasp. As Mutsuo stealthily made his way into the family's bedroom, with the chilling glint of a Japanese sword in hand, he unleashed his pent-up rage, mercilessly stabbing his unsuspecting victims as they slept, transforming their sanctuary into a scene of unimaginable horror. Mutsuo's next target was the home of Tomi, the woman who had spread rumors about his past throughout the village. Forcing his way inside, he immediately shot Tomi, killing her on the spot. He then moved into the adjacent room, where her family slept, and methodically fired upon them, extinguishing their lives one by one. The large game hunting ammunition Mutsuo used was devastatingly powerful. Known as hollow point rounds, these bullets had a special design with exposed lead tips that expanded upon impact, tearing through tissue. Some bullets lodged deep within the body, while others fragmented, sending shards throughout or creating large exit wounds. The resulting damage was horrific, leaving the bodies in a state too gruesome to behold directly. Mutsuo then turned his attention to the home of Tomi's second daughter, Chie. Chie's mother-in-law, who was shot but fortunate enough to survive, recalled that Mutsuo stated, "I have no grudge against you, but since your son married Tomi's daughter, I have to kill you." That night, Mutsuo's primary objective was to eliminate Tomi and her entire family. Mutsuo also broke into the home of Yuriko, the woman who had distanced herself from him and married another man, and mercilessly killed her family. Hearing the gunshots and screams, Yuriko instantly realized that Mutsuo had come for her. Driven by instinct, she fled to a nearby house, where she found shelter and managed to survive. Mutsuo continued to break into homes, ruthlessly killing residents one after another. Yet, there were moments when he spared certain individuals. To one elderly man at gunpoint, he reportedly said, "You never spoke ill of me, so I'll let you go," and left him unharmed. He also showed leniency to those who begged for their lives, saying, "If you value your life that much, I'll let you go." Around 3 a.m., after killing a married couple, Mutsuo's brutal rampage finally came to an end. By that point, about an hour and a half had passed since the attacks had begun. He then made his way to the top of the mountain pass and settled in a small clearing. From the hilltop, he could see the village below, the nearby settlements, and even the distant outline of his birthplace. There, under the moonlight, he began to write his last message.
As I prepare to face my end, I write these final words. I carried out my plan, but failed to strike those I intended to, instead harming those I should have protected. I acted in haste, and for that I am truly sorry, especially to my grandmother. She has been my guardian since I was 2 years old, and I should never have caused her pain. Yet, consumed by the thought of her suffering after I was gone, I made the tragic choice to end her life. I wanted to spare her a difficult goodbye, but instead, I brought her a miserable end. My heart is heavy with sorrow, and I cannot stop crying. My soul is filled with nothing but remorse and grief. To my sister, I am deeply sorry as well. Please forgive me, I was a worthless brother. Having done such a terrible thing, I do not deserve any memorial or prayers. It is my wish to rot away in the wild. For the past 4 years, I have wept for my illness and for the coldness and pressures of society. I mourn the absence of family and the love I so desperately needed. Society should show more compassion to those without families and to those suffering from tuberculosis. Through my own weaknesses, I have learned so much, and in my next life, I hope to be born stronger. Things have not turned out as I had hoped. The reason I acted today is because the woman I once loved returned to this village, a place overrun by corrupt men. They used their wealth to satisfy their desires, and they are the ones who should have been removed from this world. Now as dawn approaches, it is time to end my life.
Mutsuo set down his pencil, carefully arranging his belongings beside him. He unbuttoned his uniform, pressing the barrel of the gun firmly against his heart. With one final breath, he used his toe to pull the trigger. At approximately 4:30 a.m., the shot echoed in the stillness. The terrifying rampage that had left a trail of horror in its wake had finally come to an end.